Alrighty, hello again. Today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to graph lines given a table of values, right? So all a table of values really is it's just a different way to write a bunch of points. So we've talked a little bit about how to graph points already. So let's just jump right in. So over on the left-hand side of the screen, you're going to see this table that has X's and Y's in it, right? And what we're going to be doing, right, is we want to make points out of those and put them on the graph and then make the line that goes with it, right? So our very first step that we're going to do is we are literally just going to take the X and Y information there and spit it out into a point. So if I have an X of -2 and a Y of -2, my point will just look like -2, comma 2, right? Remember that when we're talking about points in general, if there's an X and a Y, it's always X, comma, Y, right? That's what tells us where to go on our graph to graph that information, right? To plot that point. So for this red dot here that I'm going to make, right? Oops, I'm realizing I forgot to put a little negative sign in there too, right? So -2, comma, -2. What that means is that the X for -2, I'm going to go left 2, right, to get to -2. And then for the Y, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go to -2 for the Y, which means going down, right? What that's going to do is that's going to spit me out with a point that's going to live right there, right? We're not going to be labeling these with A's or B's or letters or whatever, as we've done a little bit in the past, right? Because we're going to end up graphing a line, and it's going to look a little cluttered if we have all the ordered pairs on there too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and color code them. If you happen to have multiple colors, it might not be a bad idea, right? But it's not the end of the world if you don't. All right, let's talk about the second point there. I'm going to do this one in blue. -1, 0. So again, all I'm going to do is spit it into a point, right? -1 for the X, 0 for the Y. Right, so again, I'm going to go to -1 for the X, that little teeny tiny blue arrow there. And then because the Y is 0, I don't need to go up or down at all, right? I'm just going to stay where I am, and that's where that point is going to live, right, where that blue dot is. All right, let's keep on going. Next up, we've got the point 0, 2, right? So the X is 0, so I don't go left or right at all. For the 2 on the Y, I need to go up 2 to get that orange point there. All right, so that's all we're really doing, right? We're taking this information from the table, we're turning it into points, and we're putting those on the graph. Right, so on this one, 1, 4, I'm going to go over to 1 and then up 4. It's going to spit us out right there, right? The X was 1, so we went to the right. The Y was 4, so then we went up 4 afterwards. Okay. And last but not least, we got 2, 6, right? Which again, put it into a point if it makes it a little bit easier. I'm going to go over to 2 on the X. I'm going to go up 6 on the Y. Going to give us that purple dot there. Right. So we have all these points graphed, right? Our very last step that we want to take on these types of problems is that we want to, use a ruler, use a straight edge, like you can use the side of a notebook or a book or something. We want to line it up and just graph the line that goes through all of those points, right? Just like that. Right, you might notice that when I did that, I used the entire graph that we had available to us, right? That is something that I would really suggest, right? As we get further and further on in math, right? Making sure to use the whole graph and showing as much of the line as you can might be helpful in some situations, right? It's a good habit to get into. The only last thing that we need to do is put little arrows on the ends of our line to show that it goes on forever and ever and ever, right? So that's all we're doing, right? Take this information, turn it into points, plot them, and connect them. There you go. Right? If you're feeling up for it, what I would say is try this one out on your own, right? Give it a go. If you're feeling a little shaky, right, follow along with me. I'm going to do kind of the same thing I did before, right? Although I'm going to go a little bit faster. So what I'm actually going to do first here is I'm going to go ahead and turn all of these bits of information into points, so that when I'm working on it later on, it's a little bit faster to just kind of go through one, then the next, and then the next without having to take this step. You're also welcome to skip this step if you're able to kind of visualize it in the table itself, right? If you want to just say like, oh yeah, 2, -5, right? That would also work fine, right? Whatever works for you. If it also helps, you can write out that little x and y up top just so that you remember which is the x and which is the y. All right, so -2, 7. Going to go left to get to -2 for the x. Going to go up to 7. Right up there for that red dot to start us off. After that, we've got -1, 4. So we're going to go left 1 and up 4. Get that second dot there. I then need to go to 0, 1. So staying right in the middle and then going up 1 for that orange dot. All right. After that, we've got 1, -2. So we're going to go right to 1, down to -2. Last but not least, 2, -5. Go right over to 2, down 5. After that, all we got to do is connect the dots. Right? Sorry for the pause there. I was like, did I count to 5 correctly? Sometimes it's hard. It's also Monday morning as I'm recording this, so, you know. All right, let's go ahead, connect these up. Oops. Let's try one more time there. Cool, look at that. Perfect line. And again, I'm using my entire graph that I have available to me. Right? And that's all we're doing, right? We're just plugging in points, putting them on the graph, and connecting them. All right? All you got to do is try this one on your own for sure, right? All right, so give it a go. Put them down as points first if you want to, if that helps. Right? I'm going to kind of run through it. Right? If you wanted to continue going as I'm going, or if you wanted to pause, whatever works for you. Right? But try this one out on your own. All right, so as I'm going, and again, feel free to mute me if you're trying to do this on your own and you're keeping it going. I'm going to talk a little bit. All I'm doing is I'm turning all of these bits of information into points, so that's a little bit easier to put on the graph all together. So I'm going to start at -6, -9. All right, so that'll wind us up right down there to start off. After that, -3, -7, which will be right over there. This orange dot is at 0, -5, 3, 4, 5. And after that, we've got 3, -3, right over there. Right. And last but not least, we got 6, -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and down 1 right there. Right. So after that, again, all it really is just connecting the dots. Take a ruler, we'll throw them all together. Oops, it's a little bit off. Yeah, let's try that again. Oops, sorry about the clanking. I got a ruler that I'm using right on top of the tablet here. A little better, there we go. Right? So I'm going to let you know a little secret. Your line doesn't need to be like spot on perfect. You can see that mine kind of tilts a little bit more. It's barely on the purple and on the red at the edges, right? At the end of the day, we're worried about, can we graph it at all, right? Accuracy is something that's still good, right? So still try to be as accurate as you can. But if it's a little bit off, don't worry too much about it, right? So I'm hoping this seems pretty okay so far. I don't want to bore you to tears more than I already do. And I also don't want this video to drag on much longer than it needs to. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to do number 4 and number 5 as part of the notes when I upload this. So, if you want to, I would suggest trying them on your own. And if you wanted to check your work, check in there. But I want to kind of get to the more meat and potato stuff at the end here, just so I'm not talking to you for 45 minutes. So one other way that we can use a table of values is that we can use it to help us, finish off some information so that we can graph something, right? So what we've got here, 4x minus 2, is actually pretty darn close to being a type of, or like a form of a line that we're going to talk about, in the next couple of days or weeks. What we're going to do here, right, is that we have all these values for x, but there's nothing in the y column. So what we're going to do is we're going to say that y is equal to that 4x minus 2. So what I'm going to do to figure out what y is, right, because we don't know what this is for pretty much any of them. What I'm going to do is I have all these x values, and I'm going to plug them into that expression, 4x minus 2. So to do that, right, let's take a look at just this first one here, right? So if my x was -2, right, then we're going to say that y is equal to 4 times that x, so 4 times -2, and then -2, right? So as I simplify that, right, 4 times -2 is -8, and then -8 minus 2 more, right, is going to bring us down to -10, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get -10 as my y, right? I know that took up quite a bit of space there, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of scooch it off to the side a little bit. Some of these are going to be a little bit simpler. You can try and do them in your head if that's a little bit easier, right? But as we're getting started, it's not a bad idea to write them out just like I did this first one, right? I'll even kind of give myself a little divider here to be able to separate things. So after we do that, right, I'm going to plug in -1 for the x. Right? What that's going to look like is it's going to be, y equals 4 times that -1, and then -2. Right? So again, we're taking this same thing up at the top. We're just plugging in those different x's to figure out what the y is going to equal. Right? So again, going through it, 4 times -1 is -4. -4 minus 2 more brings us down to -6. Right? So for that one, we're going to get that y is -6. Okay. Again, some of them we can try to do in our heads, right? 0 is a pretty easy one to do in your head. If I plug a 0 in for that x, right, then I have 4 times 0 minus 2. So 4 times 0 is just 0. If I then subtract 2, right, I'm going to end up at -2, right? If we keep on going, right, same kind of deal for 1, right? Sometimes the positive number is a little easier to do in your head. 4 times 1 is 4, and then we take 2 away. So 4 minus 2 is going to leave us at +2, right? You might also be able to see a pattern going on, right? As I jump from one row to the next, my y goes from -10 to -6 to -2 to +2, right? It's going up by 4 every time, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to predict that last one should hopefully come out to be 6. So let's work it out. 4 times that 2 that we're going to plug in would be 8, and then take away 2 brings me to 6. Okay. After that, it's the same old deal, right? We could turn all of these bits of information into points, right? And we're just going to plot them on the graph, right? So take a second, try doing that on your own. I'm going to be doing it out over here at the same time. So we got -2, -10, -1, -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 0, -2. We got 1, +2, and we got 2, 6. Right up there. Okay. So again, our very last step on this is that all we need to do is just plop them all together, right? So take a ruler or some sort of other straight-edged object and just connect them up. Good enough, right? Touches all the dots, that's all we're really looking for. Right? And that's really it, right? So I know this might be a little bit more confusing than what we were doing before, and if it is, that's okay. It is a tougher thing to do, right? But the way that we get better at it is to practice with it. And boy, howdy, if you're looking ahead, you might be saying like, "Oi, I don't know about this one," right? But let's talk through this one all together. So we got -1/3 x plus 4. Right? And you might notice that I'm just pushing the graph entirely off the page right now. It's because we're going to worry about getting all these values filled in and then worry about the graph later. All right, so what I'm going to do is if my if my x is -6, I'm going to do the same thing we did before. I'm going to plug it in to this same old thing, -1/3 times that x, and then plus 4. All right, so taking the same exact thing, just plugging that in. So if you would like to use a calculator on this, that's not a bad idea, right? We've talked a little bit already about how to handle fractions, right? So to handle this fraction, what I'm actually going to do is I have that -6 in red there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to treat it as -6 divided by 1. right? Those are the same thing. It's just going to make our multiplying a little bit easier to think through. As I go ahead and do this multiplication here, right, we have negative 1/3 times negative 6 over 1. So we're going to multiply the tops together. Negative 1 times negative 6 is positive 6. 3 times 1 is 3. Right? So we have 6/3 plus 4. Well, 6/3, right? 6 divided by 3 is the same thing as 2. So this is 2 plus 4, which is just a regular old 6. All right, so that's what I'm going to get for my y. All right. What we're going to do is we're going to go through this same process for all the other ones, one at a time. So I know that sounds like so much fun. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and drag this a little somewhere further out of the way. Let's take a look at that second one there with negative 3. So for this one, right, we're going to plug a negative 3 in for x. So it's negative 1/3 times that x. I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to treat this as negative 3 over 1 to make our fractions a little bit nicer to work with. And then when I do that multiplying, negative 1 times negative 3 on the top is positive 3. 3 times 1 on the bottom is also positive 3. And then 3 divided by 3 is just 1. So this turns into 1 plus 4, which is 5. All right. So again, I'm going to kind of section that off from the next part. Now we're plugging in 0. All right. I know it's not on my screen anymore, but remember that we're plugging it into that same thing that's up at the top of this table. So that's going to be negative 1/3 times that x, which is now 0, and then plus 4. All right. 0 is a nice, easy one to do, right? Negative 1/3 times 0, just 0. Not too bad. 0 plus 4 is 4. Cool. That one's done. And again, you might be noticing a pattern here, right? Every time that I go up by 3 on the x's, right? So let's actually take a look at that. If the x goes up by 3, the y goes up by 1, right? The x goes up by 3 again. The y goes up by 1, right? So what I'm going to tell you is that if we find a pattern like this and it keeps changing the same on each side, then we can kind of fill that in, right? The x is going up by 3 again, so the y is going to change again by going up by 1. Oops, and by up by 1. This whole time, I should be saying down by 1, right? You went from 6 to 5, so that's minus 1. 5 to 4 is minus 1. And now it's going to go 4 to 3, again, taking away 1. My bad. I wonder how many of you caught that and you're like, wait a second, 6 plus 1 isn't 5. Right? So minus 1 on every time. Right? Same thing happens here, right? To go from 3 to 6 on the x's, you're adding 3. That means that we're going to do the same thing over here. We're going to take 1 away and go down to 2. Right? You're going to find, if you really, wanted to do more math out, that if you plugged all those in to that original expression we had, that we'd get 3 and 2 out of those. Right? But if you do find a pattern like that and it changes the same amount every time, feel free to use the pattern, right? So after that, all it is just plugging points in, right? Negative 6, comma 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up, which will spit us out right at that red dot. After that, we have negative 3, 5. So backwards 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 upwards. After that, we got 0, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 up there. After that, we got 3, 3. Right at that green dot. And then last but not least, 6, 2. Right over there. Right. And again, one way that actually these are kind of nice to be able to check your own work is that if you ended up, like say my last point I messed up on and I got like 6, negative 2. Oops, that's not 6. 6, negative 2, right? These are all supposed to make one straight line together. And so I can see like, oh dear, I must have messed something up, right? So you can go back and check that, right? If one dot seems off from the rest, that's something we can do. But all we got to do left, connect up these dots, and then we are good to go. Right. So we'll zoop ourselves right on through there with a straight line. And that's it. All right, so like I said, if these ones seem a little harder than what we were doing earlier, that's okay, because they are harder than what we were doing earlier on, right? So if you need some help with this, please let me know. If you try it out, 4 and 5, remember that what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish those off and upload them as part of the notes to our Google Classroom. And if you have any questions, be sure to ask when you see me. As for now, that's it. Peace out.